Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and having a great time. This month of Ramadan, I have called Farhan Ahmed from Ehsan Coaching. Assalamu alaikum, Farhan. How are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Alhamdulillah, I'm all good. I'm all good. Appreciate your time. Farhan, I believe we'll be having some thoughtful discussion and insight based discussion about drugs and pornography. Before that, we'll get have to know about you. So, kindly introduce yourself.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, my name is Farhan Ahmed. I live here in the U.S. from Chicago, Illinois. I have my master's in clinical mental health counseling, worked as a therapist for many years, and now, alhamdulillah, I started off my new initiative called Ihsan Coaching, right, where we have people who have done a master's in clinical mental health counseling or a doctorate in psychology, clinical psychology. And what we want to do is reach out to every single person, in the U.S. or even outside of the U.S. so that where they could get help that they need, so they could connect with us through our website and be able to schedule one-on-one sessions or marital sessions or family sessions and get the help that they need from professionals. And
Okay,
this,
that's some good start, mashallah, and more power to you, brother. And
thank you.
so we'll start with this drug usage and this addiction of drugs, amongst the teenagers and generally people.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, there was a study done by the National Institutes of Health, right, which is an organization here in the US. And what they did was that they, they did a study on mice, which actually showed how nicotine products, right? Nicotine isn't, when you smoke a cigarette or a lot of teenagers and even adults are doing like jewels or vapes, so there's all
Mm.
nicotine in there. So it acts as a gateway for these harder drugs. So this was a study done by the National Institutes of Health that showed how nicotine, when it was introduced to these mice, how it led as a gateway to these harder drugs, opening the door to more illicit drugs such as cocaine, marijuana, heroin, um, and even crack, right, which is actually made from cocaine. So the survey showed that that 90% of those that had done cocaine have actually did nicotine, like had nicotine from before.
Okay, okay. That's some alarming stats from there. I have this report about Pakistan here, and it says that UN did this research, and as per that report, there were like 7.6 million drug addicts that was there in Pakistan, and 78% were male, and 22% of them were actually female. And one of the biggest issue was that they those this number is actually increasing from like 40,000 per year. So that kept Pakistan, as the most drug affected countries in the world. So that's one of the alarming conditions. And the biggest dilemma here, brother, is that in early teenagers, even in the institutes, colleges and like OA level sections and in universities and high schools, that's actually a very alarming thing that students are consuming it. So I mean, they got the supplies from within the premises of their colleges, and they don't have to like go out of the school, they go out of the home, or and they can get things from their fellows and anyone who is actually who can supply them those drugs. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's actually a very major devastating thing happening.
yeah, I mean, it's very easy to get drugs nowadays, right? I mean, even here in the U.S., what's happening is that they pass laws to make marijuana illegal, legal, right? So now you could just go to a store and just buy it from many states, in many states, and just smoke up. And even like, cocaine is called the rich man's drug, right? Because of how expensive it is, but it's readily available. Here where I live in Chicago, the heroin trade is very big. Just 30 minutes, there's a very rich place called Naperville, right? Where it's a very posh area. And over there, they have a huge problem with teenagers, college students, and adults in the heroin, when it comes to heroin. So, I mean, like you're saying, it's very easy to get drugs. Like, I had a stepbrother, right? Of a stepbrother who went to medical school in Pakistan, you know, and he was telling me in Pakistan how easy it is to get any type of drug that he wanted, you know. So yeah, I mean, drugs are today. It's not difficult, right? I mean, you see that. I know in Afghanistan, they have one of the biggest, they
Yeah.
one of the biggest exporters, right? Of
Yeah.
of I mean, like Pakistan and Afghanistan are right next to each other, so
Yeah.
obviously that how easy it would be to, import it.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. Agreed to that. Definitely it is. But that's one of the factors. And ultimately, when this thing, getting all these things with ease, that gets the kids and the teens, get more into the negative side of, consumption of drugs. And this brings us to the next topic about, pornography. That
Yeah,
ultimately, before getting, because this is something that's physically, you have to consume it. So you
yeah,
get connected to a friend, you get to a supplier, you're trying to find someone else, so you get that thing physically, and you have to access someone, you go there, and then you buy it. With respect to online, like, shift and technological advancement, this pornography thing, it's way ahead than just this drug thing.
yeah,
So I don't have to go anywhere. It's right in my laptop, in my smartphone, just with some clicks. So that's way too faster than we can, like, think of as compared to the drugs. So
yeah.
that's one of the biggest alarming things.
No, of course, you're totally right. It's right in our hands, right? Like with the cell phones, with our laptops, even on the TV, right? So it's
Yeah.
readily available 24 hours a day. But just quickly before we switch topics, I just want to let
Yep.
people know about alcohol, drugs, and in general, just some of the statistics, right? There's an institute, Family and Youth Institute, over here in the U.S., and they came up with research for Muslim students, right, college students, and um, how many students like are getting into all of this. So just so that people know, right? So they're like, I know a lot of parents, like I talk to parents, and they're just shocked by the statistics. They're like, oh, my son, my daughter, they will never do any of this stuff. But I mean, if you look at it, like 17% of women have tried marijuana. Muslims we're talking about, right? 18% of men in college. So that's almost like, I mean, you could say almost one in every five women and one in every five men, right, have tried it. And then when it comes to illicit drugs, we're talking about like Oxycontin, we're talking about cocaine, we're talking about some of these harder ones, like 19% of women and 29% of men. So that's one in five and then one in four, right? And then tobacco obviously is very common, like almost
Yeah.
44% of men and 26% of women have tried like nicotine or something, one or tobacco. So I mean, it's just very, it's growing at a faster rate. It's every year it's getting becoming more and more, right? But I just wanted to highlight that. But now that we're switching the topic to more on pornography because it's something readily available. Um, you know, everybody has access. There's a survey done that showed research done that showed that 1 in 5 kids by the age of 8 years old already has a cell phone. And we all know the dangers and the harms of smartphones, right? With the smartphone, you have access to all sorts of websites at the tip of your fingers. And, at a young age, sex is something very prominent and available. Like it's something that's ingrained within our minds. Every single show that you watch, it's about relationships. It's about, if even in Bollywood movies or on any of these movies, right? Hollywood especially, it's all about kissing and making out, and even the show like more explicit sex scenes in there. So from a young age, you're ingrained to see all of these things. And what does it do? I mean, look, I know that here in the U.S. and different places they consider a woman and a man like by an adult when you turn 18, right? But Islamically, we know that uh, a girl become a woman even as early as the age of 8, 9, right? And a boy even as early as 10 or 11. So what happens is that you already have all these hormones. So you have all these thoughts that are coming throughout your mind, and what happens is that you want to watch these things, right? Or you want to, you might get attracted, right, to pornography because it's quote unquote satisfies a need, you know, a sexual need. So some of these statistics are very alarming. In 2001, there was 70,000 porn sites, okay? In 2021, today, we have more than 40 million websites. So if you see from 2001, 70,000 to today, in just 20 years, it's how many porn websites there are, pornography websites. you know that's pretty crazy. And if you actually look at it, the statistics, um, more people search for pornography websites. uh, it receives more traffic than Netflix, Twitter, and Amazon combined each month. And we all know how big Netflix, Twitter, Amazon is. So think about that. You have like almost 28.5 billion annual visits to porn websites. You know, um, 81 million almost on a daily. So these are just some alarming statistics. That's what's happening. With not just youth, also it's also with adults. It's I as a therapist, as a coach, what happens is a lot of people come in for these issues, pornography issues. They tell me that they're addicted. I ask them like, okay, what made you start? um, you know a lot of them do it because they're stressed. It's a stress reliever, right? But I mean, it starts off, or they're very they are, I don't know how to say this in a good way, but they're missing that component in their life, right? That sexual component. A lot of times this happens with married couples. I talked to a lot of married couples where they're like, we are not having a healthy marital relations, a healthy sex life, and they're like, so actually statistics show that for a couple, they should be having marital relations, sex at least 3 to 5 times a week, right? A healthy couple. But I mean, if you look at the statistics, a lot of people are lucky if even if they have it 1 time a month. So then what happens? You have needs. Men have needs, women have needs. And what do? They refer to pornography. They're trying to they're trying to satisfy those needs. And a lot of us think that, oh, you know what, this is just something that's men do. No, it's also women. Women uh, they watch pornography, yes, at a lesser rate, but it's still around, I think, like 37%, women watch it. And actually for men, It's much higher. It's almost like 90% of men have actually watched it once in their life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually alarming. And apart from these numbers and statistics, this the psychological effect that porn does to the brain, that's the most critical part, in a relationship that used to happen. And ultimately, like think of it that way, that what they do when they the porn makers, they think of it that it's becoming a $1 trillion industry. So
Yeah.
they try to come up with the new solutions. So they come up with categorizing it, and bringing in more relevant things, and they kept up the things with the recent trends over the internet. So that's how they evolved, and they've multiplied, and they kept their business going. And the issue that happened is that ultimately when a person sees that, and when this creates a fantasy image about the halal sex, like way of doing sex, that ruins that basic and the pure image of how it should be done. So that fantasy, you know even in Muslims, that becomes a devastating issue for, when you were having some like healthy relationship after
Hmm.
marriage. And because there is a mismatch, the thing that you've seen, that's a fantasy, that's not the way it should be done. And if, just in case you're trying to replicate that, that's not actually halal, and
Yeah.
that's not acceptable by either, that shouldn't be acceptable by either of the partner. And when that, basically that fantasy doesn't meets what's the reality, that's where ultimately, there's a mismatch happen. And that's the basic root cause, that it's the biggest damage, that's caused by porn to our human brain.
Yeah. That it's interesting that you mentioned that, right? It's actually good that you mentioned it, because there's neurological research that has found that how pornography is particularly addictive because of the neurochemical release in the brain, right, right when you're viewing it. So what happens is that you constantly want to get like that high, like it's kind of like a different euphoric high that you're getting when you're watching pornography, and you're constantly trying to catch that. And it's when you're watching all this, that's how it becomes addictive for individuals. you know
Yep.
and 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 another great point that you mentioned is that how it affects our relationships and marriages. you know um there's people don't understand it, don't realize this, but watching pornography actually leads to less intimacy between the spouses. When a couples watch it together, you would think that, oh, it lead to more intimacy, but actually research has showed that it leads to less, because what's happening is that you're seeing this image on the screens, right? And you're expecting that to happen at home, like all of these crazy fantasies, like you're saying, you're watching it and you're expecting your spouse to do that, and it doesn't correlate. It's not really going to happen. You have to understand that this is something that these directors and all of these people are you know showing, but the in real life, I mean, we're not these actors or actresses, you know
Exactly.
and we have to be more realistic. And then also what happens is that when you start watching this stuff, you know, look, we're normal human beings, me and you. All of us are
Yep.
normal. We have normal 9 to 5 jobs or whatever we work. We don't have the time always to, you know, we don't have chefs. We're not like all these actors and actresses who might have all this money to bodybuilders and all these things to help us work out and have these physiques. Now, everybody that we're seeing on the TV or on these websites, they have the perfect bodies,
Mm.
they're shape, all of these things. So then when you look at your spouse, you're like, and you're comparing and contrasting, and then you're not physically attracted to your spouse anymore. You know, you don't want to have intimate relationships with them because you're imagining that person in that video, and
Yep.
and you're expecting them to do. those acts, and it does, and then it, so that's what's going to cause this less intimacy between the couples, right? You're not going to get that, you're not going to enjoy it as much. And then also what happens is that eventually what's going to happen is it's going to deteriorate the marriage. You're not going to have any relations. You're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about somebody else.
Yep. Yep. And as you mentioned here about, they being actors, that's where, the ultimate reality check comes in. And they are being paid for what they're doing. And since it's a multi-trillion dollar industry,
Yeah.
they have those equipments that make things happen, the way they are shown.
Yeah.
So like that's basically the camera trick, that's how they directed and the producer, and that's how they keep it going. It's same like, I'll give the example of WWE, the wrestling thing.
Yeah.
So they are entertainers. If you compare that, if you have ever watched UFC, that's
Yeah.
the real fight. So you see that, in 40 seconds, in 50 seconds, the other person gets knocked out and it's over, man. Like it's as fast as it can be. As it compared to WWE, they are entertainers. They are paid to entertain you, and that's where these things comes in. They are actors who are actually paid, and with respect to their technological advancement and those camera things, they direct it that way that it creates a fantasy.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, right? Because you know, I want to get a little bit explicit. I hope you don't mind. I want to make sure that the audience really truly understands this, because I feel like a lot of people are dealing with pornography issues, and I feel like if we keep it very surface level, we're not going to do justice to the topic. So, I'm just going to get more detailed about it. A lot of men, they come in for performance issues. You know, they're and what you mentioned is that in these are actors, and the directors, they're playing, they cut the scenes and then they start up the scenes again and everything. What people don't understand is the average man lasts sexually 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes. And I have a lot of clients that come in and they're like, I don't, I see these videos, and how do I last longer? Like, I can't satisfy my spouse, or they feel like they're not satisfying their spouse. Well, you got to understand that a lot of these actors in these videos are taking Viagra, right? And what
Yeah.
happens is that they are ejaculating multiple times, so people don't understand that, like, they just think that, how is this person lasting 15, 20, 30 minutes? That's not really normal. The average man is not going to do that. So I want people to understand that, because I know this is a very big problem that's actually happening in with men. Like, I talk to men a lot about this as performance issues, and it's not what Islamically, even what they say is that there's a lot of foreplay that needs to be done beforehand, between spouses. A lot of the times what happens is that people just go straight for sex, just trying to just straight to it. And, even the scholars and people, and when you're learning about this from an Islamic point of view, they say that, enjoy your spouses, like kiss, touch one another, feel, right? Take your time with one another, and then eventually, when your sensations are very high, then you have those intimate relations, have sex and everything. But a lot of people just rush into it, and I've had this a lot of times, even in marriages, where the woman is actually complaining to me that, I'm not feeling sexually satisfied. So we have to talk about this with the husband and the wife and say, what's going on. And a lot of times we don't have these conversations when we're younger. Our parents don't really talk to us about sexual intimacy, how to please your spouses, and all of this stuff. So the husband and wife are both not satisfied. So I have to explain it to the man how to please their wife, and sometimes I have to explain to the woman like what men like, and vice versa. It's a very sensitive topic also inside the Muslim community, so I have to be very
Yeah.
respectful of how I say it. You know, but
Agreed.
but the thing is that that you have to play with different body parts. You know, you have to find out what your spouse likes. The hot spots. Like some women, they like kissing around the neck. They like kissing around the navel. Like they like how you touch them in a certain way, and even men. So what I always tell couples is find out what your spouse likes. Have these open discussions. Like that's the beauty of a marriage, right? The beauty of a marriage is now you're married to that person. Explore them, with each other. You could have these open conversations. There's none of the shyness with each other. The more we're open, the more we'll feel comfortable with each other, and the more we'll open up. It'll open up a different kind of a relationship.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I don't know how it is over there, like with like growing up, but even our family members, you would always see the husband and the wife, they'll never sit by each other, or they'll never hold hands with each other in front of everybody else. I mean, our prophet was not like that. Our prophet,
Yep.
sallallahu, he would hold his wife's hand. He would,
Yep.
there's hadiths where how when Aisha radiallahu anha would drink from a spot, he would put his lips on where her lips was, and he would drink from that same spot. He was very romantic. But
Yep.
we, for some reason, in today's thing, we're thinking that this is un-Islamic. We cannot be romantic, and we don't show our children these things, and then they grow up with this weird sense of what relationships are, sexual.
Yep.
And that's what I
Yeah.
always try explaining to people is that, look, I mean, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this halal for you. It's like
Yes.
now you could do anything you want basically with your spouse,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
enjoy it. So, and I don't know if you have, I mean, there's a lot more I could say, but I want you to jump in if you have anything.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that you mentioned here, and I actually had those pointers, to highlight. One of the basic things is about, not having these conversations in the teenage while you get puberty with your parents. First issue. Talking about sex usually in family, in Eastern family, I would say, is not that much common. So that's the one of the biggest gap, that you don't get the relevant information, you know, about sex education and, proper cleansing of your body and, the common issues that either you or your spouse can be facing, So those basic information and the knowledge, I don't think that, that's commonly, shared in the families here in Eastern families. So that's one of the common issues that is. Apart from that, the other thing is that, again, first it's not talked in the family. The other part is it's not shown in the family, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
So we usually don't see the parents, that they are enjoying their me time. So here in my podcast, I've talked always about, a person enjoying the me time. But since it's a topic about family, so with between the spouse, there should be their own me time. And again, first it's not talked, second it's not shown. We usually don't see here in Eastern family that, the parents are sitting, they go out and eat something, on their own wish in their favorite restaurant. They watch
yeah,
some good, drama or some movie or some play or something, and so they're there for you, but what usually I believe, they're not there for their own selves. So they don't have their own time for, their relationship. So that's one of the things, that if the child sees that, their parents are there, but they don't have their own moments, where they
yeah,
can show romance. And that basically gives you a very, very mature concept of a halal relationship. That
yeah,
how you can attract your other spouse, and you could portray a very good picture living within your family. But since it's not shown, first, again, those two pointers, since not discussed and not shown,
yeah,
that basically is a gap in a teenager or a person who's not married yet. And when ultimately all this is going to happen, that's like a blank space, and
Mm.
it becomes a question mark that what to do, and how to show the love, how to attract, and things like that. And then this Mr. Google, it comes up and it gives you a hell lot of fantasized things. And there are some relationship gurus and everyone, and they don't show you how how to get the flame of relationship
Yeah.
going. I, I I see those people doing crazy businesses on Instagram, and they are like they'll make your life like heaven, and they're twin flame and everything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, if you get the real information in the real time, you literally don't need any kind of Google guru, relationship advisor, or some anyone else. So that's one good topic you highlighted, that it needs to be discussed, it needs to be talked about, and actually it needs to be shown as well,
Mhm.
because ultimately children's usually observe when they're out. So you're not, if even if you're not telling them, if they're seeing, they'll adopt.
Yeah.
And there are many habits that we see that children copy from their parents. So
Oh,
if they see, like, that there is a halal way, proper way of doing romance within, having living with everyone, and how to greet and treat your spouse. So that could be observed, and ultimately that could be answered, a question as
yeah.
well. So if I see one of my parents, they're having their me time, and they're spending some valuable time with each other, I observe that, and then I'll question them. So being
Mm.
a millennial, we are actually very curious. So
Yeah.
I'll ask. So that again, that comes with the environment of a family, or I'll say culture of the family.
Yeah.
How how open you are to this discussion. Ultimately, the sad part is that in Eastern families, again, it's kind of like a taboo topic.
No,
No one is that no one is that much open. So
yeah.
first of you don't get this information from your family. With respect to schools, there is no one talking about the sex education.
Yeah.
There is no one talking about this relationship things and everything. So but you got those friends, and
Yeah.
these friends, they come up with a package at times that's not so good, that could include evil in what they're preaching. So when you don't get this from family, if you get this from friends, that's devastating.
Yeah.
So I mean, this needs to be addressed, and this needs to be talked about. Ultimately, that could bring in some valuable things for the future parents.
Yeah. So I mean, kids are observation and learners, right?
Yeah.
What we see is what we're going to do. It's like that's why when like I have a 6 month, like I have 3 kids, alhamdulillah. So
Mashallah.
I like and any parent knows this, right? When your child is little, you're praying, and your child just comes up. They don't even you never taught them how to pray, but what they do, they start mimicking you. They know all the movement because they saw you doing it, so now they're doing it, right? So I mean that's their observational learners. But this I want to get back to the whole pornography and everything, because see what happens is that from a young age we have all of these gadgets, we have everything, we have the smartphones, we have our laptops, we have TV and all of this, and we have to be very careful about what we watch and what our kids are watching, right? What our children are watching. Because what happens is that it might start off very innocent. I remember a long time ago that, when I was watching movies with my dad, you know, um, like if a kissing scene came up, we would all close off the TV for a minute, or we'll fast forward and be like, "Oh, astaghfirullah," and like that, right? And all that. But
Yeah.
nowadays, if you watch something with the family, it's like it's only kissing. It's only that. It's not that bad. Like you don't feel uncomfortable anymore. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's going you know and
Yeah.
it leads, one step will lead to the next, and then all of a sudden nowadays you're seeing on Netflix, I mean, Netflix is everywhere, right? Netflix on purpose has shown so much sex scenes, sexuality in the shows, because they know that sex sells, and they
Mm.
People are watching it for that reason, right? So we have to be very careful because it all of this thing leads to something even worse, right? And then
Yep.
eventually, it leads to pornography. And then what happens is that, there it's very interesting because, once you start on pornography, you start watching, if you see some of the things, actually there's research done about what people search, what kind of pornography that people want to watch. And I mean, if I tell you some of this stuff, it's very disgusting, you know? And it starts off as they want to watch normal, you know? They just want to watch a woman and a man having sex. Eventually, because they watched so much that doesn't do it for them anymore. You know, they're not satisfied just watching a man and a woman having sex. So eventually, it keeps going and going and going to where they want to watch, I want to just say it. So, they want to watch men having sex with animals, right? This is a huge thing. If you watch that, I mean, I'm telling you, if you just look at the statistics of what people are watching, like these Pornhub and all of these websites, they actually show like what kind of
Yep.
pornography people are
They
searching.
share the data. Yep.
Yeah,
They share the data.
and you can see like what people are searching because they're not satisfied anymore with just normalcy. So I mean,
Yep.
this is what I'm saying, and then they get into all of the habits, and that's why we need to come up with, we have to understand, like, so I get a lot of people that say, what can I do, how can I stop this,
Yep.
like I have this addiction and it's really controlling my life. It's not just one time a day that they're watching pornography, right? They're watching it multiple times a day. Any single time something bad happens, that's the resort, the stress relief, and then they get into this guilt trip, and then it's psychologically they're they're depressed because of these addictions, and it's now ruining their marriages, right? I've seen marriages break up because of addiction, because of these addictions. The woman, the wife, she feels like she's being cheated on, or the husband, he's like, why are you watching this thing? So, and then eventually it leads like infidelity and all of these things, right? So what can we do to stop it? What are some of the things? One of the things that I tell people is, number one, on your routers and your modems, there's a way to block out these websites, right? That you put
Yep.
on, you could put what these blockers on, so that even if you go like www dot, let's just say porn.com, it'll show up as, hey, you cannot go on these websites. It'll block it out, right? So I mean, yeah, there's always ways to go around it, but these are at least one step. you know the second step is, if you're very serious about this addiction, you know the worst thing you could do is have a smartphone, because no matter what we do, the smartphone is always in our hands. It
Yep.
shows addiction. There was a research that shows that on average, we use our phones 6 hours a day, 6 to 7 hours a day. We're always on our phones. And so
Yep.
think about, people are just scrolling. You're seeing all these images, right? Every single time, like you're on any of these websites, are they doing? They're showing women constantly, or they're showing the
Yep.
opposite constantly. And so what happens is that you are getting excited, and you want to watch some of these things. You want to watch pornography. You want to watch something that's going to make you at that moment, quote unquote, happy,
Yep.
and stuff. So you need to these smartphones are very bad for us. So I mean, I don't know how practical that is, because people are not just going to give away their smartphones, right? But
Mm.
you have to find that maybe an app or something that blocks these things, or downgrade for a little bit, go to one of these dumb phones, that doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything, until you could get this addiction under control. Another thing is for kids, like laptops and stuff like that, have them, or even at home for teenagers and you know and college, and maybe have do not have them let them have these laptops and everything behind a closed door. you know One of
Mm.
the put it in a open space where everybody is, so that they're not tempted to go on those websites, right? If you could go in your room and close the door, I mean, God knows what you're doing behind there, right? That's where uh, anything could happen. So we have to be practical. We have to understand. Like, I mean, the number one thing, obviously, in our deen is to lower the gaze, right? I mean, if you're looking down, you're not looking at all of these things, then you're not going to be tempted as much. But I mean, let's be real. How many people are going to do that? We go to work, we go all these places. It's not that you're not just going to look at the opposite gender, but that's why what we have to control what we watch. I don't know the shows that are big in Pakistan, but one of the biggest shows that was big over here is Games of Thrones, and on HBO, and there's a lot of sexual scenes in there, right? Like anybody that's seen it, alhamdulillah, I've not seen it myself, but I have a lot of friends that've seen it, so they tell me what happens in there. So there's a lot of sex scenes and everything in that, and HBO knows. That's what HBO is known for. All of these big Showtime, all of these things, they do this on purpose because they know that sex sells. So we have to be careful about what we watch, right? Because when we're watching these things, it's going to lead to it's going to lead us to wanting to do more, right? And also not just a lot of people are watching it with their spouses too. So I get it that people want to watch TV, they want to watch movies, but what I would say is watch something that's cleaner, right? Watch something that there's a lot of shows, there's a lot of movies out there that are not have so many explicit sex scenes. So I would say just watching something that's cleaner, and I'm telling you what's going to happen is that you are going to enjoy your spouse more. You're going to enjoy who you are with more. Think about this. When you were never married, I don't know if you're married or not, but like before I was married, you know, or somebody that's not married, and if they're waiting, and they never seen, like, I mean, I don't know, in Pakistan they have all boys school, all girls schools, right? So what happened, like, the moment that you see a girl for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, or you see a boy for the first time, you're like, wow, so think about it. If you never experienced any of this stuff before, the moment that you only have your spouse in front of you, how much more you're going to enjoy them, right? How much more you're going to have fun with them, right? But if you're constantly seeing all of these images, and you're watching pornography, and you're pleasing yourself and doing masturbating or anything like that, what's going to happen eventually is that you're not going to have that same fun, or you're not going to have that same um, excitement that you would with your spouse, because if you've already done it. Does it make sense?
Yep. One important thing that actually you highlighted here is I discussed this, the other day with one of the YouTubers here in Pakistan, and we were talking about this content consumption. So
Yes.
what you consume, which basically makes you. And with respect to this cookie policy, what these websites have and their algorithms based on which their apps and usually their content breaks, this is way too smarter than we actually think. So once I've clicked any explicit content, it gives that cookie the signal that from this IP address, this person has just clicked on this content. Whether it was just an ad and I was about to skip that ad, but I got to click on that ad. So it got that from this IP address, that person has built a cookie of viewing the content. Then all the apps are so smart enough, be it YouTube, be it Instagram, be it anything, whenever I go to that, there will be anything related to explicit content, be it a product, be it a movie, be it a song, anything, it will appear, in the very front, like, sections of my browsing. And then you'll get to know that, these, that's how they influence and they work. So they'll show you based on what cookie they are generated, and ultimately you consume that content, and that's what you are basically created into. So if you consume porn, you basically are what you're doing. You're basically consuming the shit and creating and the fantasy creating in your mind.
Yeah.
Compare it, like if you are consuming good content, if you're consuming reading, research, recitations, and like positive uh, self-help related things, or like me time, or like poetry, arts related thing. That's what makes you, a very very good, maybe a good human, maybe a good observer, good listener, good writer. So what basically you consumes, that ultimately makes you. And with these last words we were having, so basically that's where I want to close this, as that that's how important it is, that what you consume actually makes you. So it is. And I would love to have some final words if you have about
Yeah.
this as well.
I think that's a good place to close, right? Is that what you consume is what's ultimately you're going to be, what's going to make you, right? It's not that if I've seen a lot of people with addictions and I've worked with them, and there is a chance to change, right? And we have to look at it from two folds, right? The number one thing is we need to make tawbah, right? We need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, right? And when we do that, our we're cleaning our hearts spiritually, and also, it's going to help us, not do these things again, right? And then what you could do, second thing, is that you consume good content, right? I mean, like you're saying, instead of watching something that's going to be harmful for you, watch something that's going to be positive, that's going to make you a better human being. Listen to the Quran, listen to nasheeds, listen to something that's going to make you closer to Allah, make you feel better. Not all of these things that are going to consume you and eventually going to make you depressed and sad. So what we consume is what's going to make us, and we have the option. We are in control. That's what I want people to know, is that every single person is in control of their own destiny, is in control of their own life, right? Of what we do. Shaitan could only whisper in your ear, but he cannot make us type in anything on our laptops or on our phones or anything like that. He cannot make us do anything.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we have to be the ones that are saying, have that willpower and say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to be
Yeah.
strong enough. And we all have that strength within us. We just have to
Yeah.
find it, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with getting help and talking to professionals and, seeking help and having people help you along this journey. Yes, you don't tell everybody your issues, but go to professionals, go to people that
Yeah.
actually know what they're doing, and get the help that you need and make your life better. So that's where I'll leave off with.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Jazakallah khair, brother.
No,
I highly appreciate your valuable time,
no,
and I'll definitely share the link for the reference of my audience. And looking forward to have you again for something topics that I believe it's actually taboo in our society, but
yeah,
since it needs to be addressed, so I would love to have you again.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, listeners, till the next podcast, I guess that's it for today. I say you all Allah Hafiz. Bye bye.